Once upon a time, Chris Tucker was the brightest light in Hollywood comedy, a force of pure energy, charisma, and laughter. From the unforgettable Smokey in Friday to the wisecracking Detective Carter in Rush Hour, he had the kind of comedic timing that made audiences erupt in joy every time he appeared on screen. At one point, he was the highest-paid actor in the world, turning down roles that others would beg for. But behind the laughter, there was a different story, one filled with loneliness, pressure, and the crushing weight of fame. While the world saw the jokes and the money, few knew the man who struggled to find peace in the spotlight. After Rush Hour 3, Tucker vanished. Hollywood insiders whispered about ego, money, and religion. Some said he had become difficult to work with. Others claimed he simply lost interest in fame. But the truth, as it turns out, is far more tragic. A story of a man who had everything and yet felt completely empty inside. Today, at 64, Chris Tucker's life looks nothing like the Hollywood dream he once lived. He's quieter now, more reflective, and often distant from the world that once adored him. His story isn't just about success and downfall. It's about the price of laughter, the pain of faith, and the haunting realization that even the funniest man in the room can carry the heaviest heart. What really happened to see before the fame, before the million-dollar paychecks, before the headlines? Chris Tucker was just a kid from Atlanta with a dream and a microphone. Born in 1971, he grew up in a working-class family where laughter wasn't just entertainment, it was survival. His quick wit and natural humor made him stand out early, and by his late teens, Tucker was already performing in small comedy clubs, using his sharp timing and high-pitched voice to win over crowds. In the early 90s, comedy was changing. The rise of Def Comedy Jam gave young black comedians a national platform, and that's where Tucker truly exploded. His sets were electric, full of energy, rhythm, and personality. Every word, every movement, every punchline hit like lightning. Within months, he went from being an unknown comedian to one of the most talked-about new voices in stand-up. Hollywood noticed. In 1995, Tucker landed his breakthrough role in Friday, alongside Ice Cube. The film wasn't expected to be a hit, but it became a cultural phenomenon, and Chris Tucker's character, Smokey, became iconic. His wild energy, hilarious facial expressions, and unforgettable one-liners turned him into an overnight star. Fans quoted him everywhere, and suddenly Tucker was one of the most in-demand comedians in the business. He followed it up with roles in Money Talks and The Fifth Element, showing that he wasn't just funny, he could hold his own next to action stars and dramatic actors alike. Then came 1998, and everything changed forever. That year, Tucker teamed up with Jackie Chan for Rush Hour, a buddy cop film no one expected to work. Two stars from completely different worlds, cultures, and styles. But when they got on screen together, something magical happened. The chemistry was instant, and the humor was effortless. Tucker's fast-talking, larger-than-life personality played perfectly off Chan's stoic, action-driven style. Rush Hour became a global sensation, earning hundreds of millions of dollars, and turning Tucker into one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood. For the first time in his career, he wasn't just famous, he was powerful. He had creative control, box office dominance, and a fan base that adored him. By the early 2000s, he was on top of the world. He became the highest-paid actor in Hollywood, earning $25 million for Rush Hour 3. His name meant success. His smile was everywhere. But fame, as Tucker would soon discover, comes with a price. Despite the success, there were cracks forming behind the scenes. He began turning down roles, big ones. He refused to appear in the Friday sequels, even though fans begged for Smokey's return. Rumors started to swirl. Was it ego? Was it money? Or was something deeper happening? Those who knew him said Chris was changing. He'd become more spiritual, more private, more cautious about the world around him. Hollywood's temptations, the parties, the lifestyle, the endless spotlight no longer appealed to him. He talked about God, about purpose, about wanting something more meaningful than fame. But the industry doesn't wait for soul-searching. While Tucker was stepping back, new comedians were stepping in. Kevin Hart, Dave Chappelle, and others began filling the space he left behind. Hollywood moved forward, and Chris faded into silence. At 64, looking back, Tucker often describes that rise as both a blessing and a burden. He once said, "When you make people laugh, they think you're always happy. But sometimes the funniest people are the ones hurting the most." That was the beginning of the tragedy, a man who gave the world laughter but slowly lost himself in the process. Chris Tucker. And why does his story break hearts even today? By the time Rush Hour 2 hit theaters in 2001, Chris Tucker was at the absolute peak of his career. He was young, rich, and loved around the world. Audiences couldn't get enough of his quick-talking comedy and effortless charm. Every studio in Hollywood wanted a piece of him. But what no one saw coming was his sudden disappearance, a vanishing act that left fans confused and the industry stunned. After Rush Hour 2, Tucker stepped away from the spotlight. He stopped taking film offers. He turned down roles that would have made him even richer. Rumors swirled. Some said he had creative differences. Others whispered that his ego had gotten out of control. But the truth was far more complicated. Chris Tucker wasn't running from Hollywood. He was running from himself. During the height of his fame, Tucker had begun to feel a growing emptiness. The laughter, the lights, the fame, it all started to feel meaningless. Friends noticed that he became quieter, more withdrawn. He began reading the Bible more often, attending church, and focusing on his faith. Hollywood, a place built on illusion, suddenly felt like the last place he wanted to be. He later admitted that he struggled with the pressures of fame and the moral conflicts that came with it. "I didn't want to do movies that didn't represent who I was becoming," he once said in an interview. "I didn't just want to be funny anymore. I wanted to be right with God. But Hollywood doesn't forgive silence easily. When you stop showing up, people move on." While Tucker was soul-searching, the industry was already replacing him. Comedians like Kevin Hart and Mike Epps were rising fast, filling the space Tucker once dominated. The studios stopped calling. For years, Chris Tucker became a mystery. He appeared rarely, often at charity events or church gatherings. His name would pop up in tabloids, stories about unpaid taxes, financial struggles, or rumors about him turning down movie deals because of his faith. Some reports claimed he owed millions to the IRS, and that financial stress had forced him into isolation. To fans, it was heartbreaking. How could one of the most talented and beloved comedians in the world vanish like that? Why did the man who made everyone laugh seem so lost? Those closest to him said it wasn't about money or fame. It was about purpose. Tucker had grown tired of playing the same loud, over-the-top roles. He wanted depth, meaning, and peace. But in doing so, he found himself drifting further away from the very thing that made him who he was: performing. By the late 2000s, Tucker was a ghost in Hollywood. Years passed without a single major film. He declined offers for Friday sequels, refused edgy comedies, and avoided the fast-paced lifestyle he once ruled. Even when Rush Hour 3 came along in 2007, he seemed distant, older, quieter, more restrained. The spark that once defined him flickered, but didn't shine the same way. The movie made money, but fans could feel it. Something had changed. The Chris Tucker they loved was fading into the shadows. In one of his rare interviews, he said something that revealed the pain beneath the surface. "People think when you're rich and famous, you're happy. But money can't fix what's broken inside." That quote captured the tragedy perfectly. The realization that success can't save you when your soul feels lost. As the years went on, Tucker's disappearance became one of Hollywood's great mysteries. Where did he go? Why did he walk away from everything? The answer, perhaps, was simple. He didn't want to lose himself just to make others laugh. But in protecting his soul, Chris Tucker paid a heavy price. Loneliness, financial struggles, and a career that once seemed unstoppable slowly slipping away. By the early 2010s, Chris Tucker had become one of Hollywood's greatest mysteries. Once the highest-paid actor in the world, now he was rarely seen. His laughter, once booming from movie screens across the globe, had gone quiet. The man, who had it all, had disappeared into a life that was both peaceful and painful. But silence, as Tucker would learn, comes with a price. After stepping away from the film industry, his finances began to collapse. Without steady income, years of expensive living and poor financial advice caught up to him. In 2014, reports surfaced that Tucker owed millions in back taxes to the IRS. It was a shocking revelation. The man who had earned $25 million for a single film was now facing financial ruin. Many couldn't understand it. How could someone so successful lose everything? But those close to him said it wasn't about greed or extravagance. It was about trust. He had relied on advisors who mishandled his money, and by the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. Tucker didn't run from the problem. He quietly began paying back what he owed, taking on small tours and private comedy shows to rebuild his finances. He didn't complain, didn't blame anyone, he just worked. But those who saw him during that period said the spark in his eyes was dimmer. The weight of failure, financial, emotional, and spiritual, was heavy. Still, his faith never wavered. He often said that God was testing him, reminding him of what truly mattered. When you lose everything, you find out who you really are, he once told a friend. But while Tucker's spiritual strength grew, the world seemed to forget him. Younger audiences knew him only as that guy from Rush Hour, while the industry moved on without him. The same Hollywood that once worshipped him now barely remembered his name. Then something unexpected happened. In 2012, he made a quiet return to the big screen with Silver Linings Playbook, starring alongside Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence. The role was small, but powerful, a reminder that Tucker wasn't just funny. He could act. Critics praised his performance, calling it mature, grounded, and real. It should have been his comeback. But instead of chasing the momentum, Tucker retreated again. Some said he still couldn't find roles that fit his values. Others believed he simply didn't trust Hollywood anymore. Behind the scenes, the struggle continued. Tucker still faced financial difficulties, and though he kept his faith strong, the isolation weighed on him. The laughter that had once defined him now came only in glimpses, on stage during rare stand-up appearances or quiet interviews where he spoke about life, faith, and forgiveness. Fans began to worry. Where was the man who made the world laugh in Friday and Rush Hour? Why was he so far away from the world that loved him? The truth, as painful as it was, came from Tucker himself. I didn't want to lose myself in Hollywood. But somewhere along the way, I lost something else, the joy of doing what I love. That confession said everything. Chris Tucker wasn't destroyed by fame. He was worn down by it. The pressure to stay relevant, the fear of losing faith, the guilt of mistakes, and the loneliness that comes from walking away from your dreams. It all took a toll. At 64, Tucker's tragedy isn't just about lost money or missed opportunities. It's about a man who gave the world laughter but never found lasting happiness for himself. His story is a painful reminder that behind the brightest smiles often lie the deepest struggles. As one close friend put it, Chris never stopped believing in God, but I think somewhere along the way, he stopped believing in himself. And that, more than anything, was the true price of silence. Today, at 64, Chris Tucker lives a life far different from the glitz and chaos of his Hollywood past. Gone are the flashing cameras, red carpet premieres, and million-dollar paychecks. What remains is a man who has finally found peace, but at a cost that still breaks hearts. In his quiet moments, Tucker often reflects on the wild journey that took him from the streets of Atlanta to becoming one of the most recognizable faces in the world. He talks about those days with a mix of gratitude and regret. Thankful for the blessings, but haunted by what fame took from him. I used to think making people laugh was my purpose, he once said softly in an interview. But now I think it was just a way for God to open doors, to show me something bigger than success. For years, Tucker stayed away from Hollywood, focusing on rebuilding his faith and reconnecting with his family. He spent time performing at small venues, not for fame, but for joy, rediscovering the simple love of making people smile. Fans who attended his shows noticed that he seemed lighter, more genuine, almost free, but behind that peace was a loneliness that few could see. Tucker admitted that walking away from fame wasn't easy. You spend years chasing something, and when you finally stop running, you realize you don't know who you are without it, he confessed. Even so, he refused to let bitterness take over. Instead, he poured his energy into charity work, visiting underprivileged communities, mentoring young comedians, and supporting organizations that help those struggling with addiction and homelessness. To him, helping others became the new stage, the new purpose. Hollywood occasionally came knocking again. There were talks of another Rush Hour sequel, rumors of collaborations with major directors, and fan petitions begging him to return. Tucker would smile politely and say, "Maybe someday." But deep down, he knew he didn't need it anymore. The spotlight that once defined him now felt unnecessary. His friends describe him as humble and spiritual, spending most of his time with his son and close family. He still cracks jokes, still laughs loud, but there's a quiet wisdom in his words now, the kind that only comes from years of pain and reflection. In recent years, Tucker has started to open up about the emotional cost of fame. He's spoken about the nights when he felt completely alone, even while surrounded by millions of fans. He's admitted that his fear of losing himself often kept him from opportunities that could have changed his career. And yet, he never expressed resentment, only acceptance. "I walked away because I had to," he said. "If I'd stayed, I might have lost my soul. And no movie's worth that." Those words reveal everything. The tragedy and the triumph intertwined. Chris Tucker may not have the fortune he once did, but he has something Hollywood could never give him: peace. His story isn't just one of fame and loss. It's about rediscovery. The boy from Atlanta who made the world laugh found his way back to something purer: faith, family, and freedom. He may no longer dominate the box office, but to those who truly know his story, he's more powerful than ever, and yet the heartbreak remains. Because the world lost more than just a comedian, it lost one of its brightest lights too soon. Not to death, but to disillusionment. Chris Tucker's tragedy lies in the silence, in the laughter that stopped too early, in the talent that Hollywood no longer sees, and in the man who chose peace over fame. At 64, when Tucker smiles now, it's softer, slower, almost wistful, as if he knows something the rest of us don't. Perhaps he's finally found what he was searching for all along, because sometimes the greatest comeback isn't returning to fame, it's finding yourself after the world forgets you.